Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Sample Chapter Podcast. I am Jason A. Meiske, thriller author and host of this show. And man, do we have a show for you today. This is definitely going to be our longest show so far, but for good reason, as you're going to see. If you took a look at the name, who's posted on the name of this show, you know what's coming, and you know why I'm excited. But let's start things off as we always do with a little bit of thanks. Big shout out and thank you to podcastgarden.com. They are the place to go if you are interested in looking for other shows. You can search by category, by type, by genre, and you can find lots of really great shows out there. If you're interested in starting your own show, podcastgarden.com will allow you to start for free. It's easy too. You just go in there, you click the button, you start uploading your name and what you want to do. Upload your show and you're done in just a matter of minutes. Podcastgarden.com. Thank you so much for being the host site of this show. If you want to reach out and say, hey, Jason, I like the show. If you have an author that you want to hear me interview, if you want to share with friends, if you just want to contact me, email me at samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to facebook.com Sample Chapter Podcast, and you can give us a like. You can message us from there. You can share with your friends. All of our episodes will be shared on there. We also share regular information about past guests, past episodes, upcoming stuff. We try and tease information the days leading up, and we always try and share whatever we can. But anyway, that's over at facebook.com/Sample Chapter Podcast. Give us a big like over there. If you're enjoying the show, please give us a like on whatever format that you're listening to, whether that's Google, whether that's iTunes, whether you're coming on over to Podcast Garden and liking us or listening to us. Wherever you're finding our show, make sure you please give us a rating. Give us a 5-star, 4-star, whatever. Maybe hey, I really like the authors, I like the sample chapters, but Jason sounds stupid. 3 stars. Hey, I can live with that. I'll take it. Go ahead. Just that's the best way for us to get more notice to other people out there, is to get more ratings. It helps the show grow. It's going to just give us some more reach, and I'd really appreciate if you could give us a like and a rating on there. And don't forget to tell your friends about us too. All right, our guest today, man. Let me see if I can do some of this stuff without actually saying the name up front. So today's guest, he currently sits on Amazon at number 22. That's as of today, the 25th of February. He is number 22 overall on all of Amazon. He's number 2 in sci-fi, number 3 in teens, number 3 in sci-fi fantasy. He was as high as number 10 on author ranking very, very recently, but how that fluctuate up and down. But these are his numbers as of today, and I can tell you he's got some exciting stuff coming up. That ranking's going to skyrocket again here pretty quick. He's approaching 200 books in all. What? 200 books? Are you kidding me? He's not there yet, but he's going to be there pretty darn quick. The man started writing in November of 2015. He has 27 books that he has written himself. 6 additional books that he wrote are stories that are in an omnibus. So that's 33 books that he himself has written. Well over 100 more that he's got his name on for other series that he co-writes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't keep going without saying his name. Yeah, I'm talking about the Michael Anderle, the guy who created the Catherian Gambit, which he just completed book 21 of that series. So that story arc has come to a completion. Oh man, I mean, just if you can't tell, you're going to tell here in a little bit when you hear the audio of when I got a chance to talk to him. You can tell how excited I was and what a loser I am, being so nervous and ridiculous. But I mean, not only was he putting out these books in rapid succession and climbing up the charts, but once he reached a certain point, he decided, you know what, I'm really having a good time, and there's no reason why other authors out there can't do the same. So he started helping out other ones by opening up his series to other series. So he's starting off with this urban fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal story, branching out into other types of genres, whether that's military, space military, horror, sci-fi fantasy, and fantasy. He's got young adults. I mean, he's branching out into all these other ones because he's interested in what do readers want. What are the stories they want to hear. As an author, he is so in tune and interested in what do you, the reader, want. And man, it's so cool. Just the ideas that he's come up with, and the way he's helped other authors, independent authors, because he's independent himself. So the way he's reached out to help other independent authors, he's now created his own publishing company that publishes books on a regular basis, several books a month. He's got the numbers in the episode. You're going to hear that. The man wants to help other authors. He wants to tell you a good story, and that's what he's interested in. And it was a real pleasure to talk to him. I'm at this point, I feel like I'm just rambling, so let's just get on over to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Anderle. And welcome back to Sample Chapter Podcast. My guest today really needs no introduction. It's Michael Anderle. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Appreciate being here, Jason.
So, man, I mean, where do we start? I mean, it's the Arthurian Gambit series. What is there's 21 books in that so far? How many?
Oh, no. Yeah, where would we start? Well, but I was born in 1967. No, a little too far back, Mike, a little too far back. Okay, so Arthurian Gambit, the first book that I dropped, Death Becomes Her, was in November of 2015. And I dropped 4 books, 3 in November and 1 in December. And then 2016, I did another 12 books or something, like 12 titles. And then started collaborating. And last year we did probably 100 and something titles. So that's in multiple universes and different collaborations that are going on. So, we had talked about it. And so just me, myself, I've got 33 titles, of which 6 of those are omnibuses. And so that leaves me at about 27 unique titles myself. I just finished book 21 of the Arthurian Gambit. And so that closes off that large arc, and book 4 of the Second Dark Ages. So those 2 series, 25 books with those. 2 of those are collaborations with L.E. Clark, the last 2 of the Second Dark Ages. And then I've got a whole universe with Martha Carr, and that's the Oricerian universes. And people, whenever they see the name, they're like, how do you pronounce this? And Martha and I are scratching our heads, because as the creators of the universe, we never have a problem, talking about it. But so we found that to be kind of surprising. But there's another probably 35 books in that series. So there's a bunch.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, I probably jumped ahead there a little bit. So let's step back. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How'd you get started in writing?
So I'm 50 now, and I was about 47-ish whenever I got started on this whole thing. So I've been a lifelong reader. I've been passionate about reading, and oftentimes I would consider myself what's called a whale reader. And I coined that term as a situation based on whale gamblers who, go to Vegas and gamble a lot. And I had said that, that people talk about how the average reader reads maybe 4 books a year or something. I'm like, a whale reader reads 1 book a week minimum. So they're at least 50 to 52 books a year. And I would be reading at times 4 to 5 books a weekend, especially if it's a long weekend. And then now I know that, even that is kind of pansy compared to some of the romance readers who read 1 to 2 books a day. And I'm like,
wow.
Hats off, y'all win. So what kind of went on is back in 2014, my wife was doing a lot of traveling. She's global marketing director, and she had done this for quite a few years. So it wasn't just 2014, but she was gone. And one of my bucket list items as I'm, getting into that a little bit older was to be a writer. And one of my sons, my oldest, Joshua, has the skill for writing, but he doesn't have my proclivity or my desire to just say, hey, you know what? I'm just willing to try to do it. No big deal. He wants to learn everything and figure it out and then stick his toe in the water. And I'm like, screw it. So half because it was a bucket list item for me, half because I wanted to try to figure out how to be able to tell him what's going on, I wrote my first book. As a whale reader, believed that I knew that, I needed 3 books out before I did any marketing. And I had a marketing and sales consulting company for Google SEO and other things at the time. So I had a background. I knew how to create websites. I didn't know jack about indie publishing. So there was an opportunity. Since I'm older, I had some wisdom that guided me on deciding, like, if this even has a chance, I don't want to be stuck writing a series that only has one genre. I want to write in all my genres because I'm greedy that way, apparently. And so I created a concept that allowed me to start in paranormal, kind of vampire werewolves, and then move it into another area. And it took the paranormals quite by surprise, those that really enjoyed urban fantasy. And I took their beloved vampire werewolf into a completely new direction. And the tagline is, whatever you think you knew about vampires and werewolves is wrong. So very, very wrong. And it grew because I wrote so fast and we put so many books out so quickly. The whale readers just connected to it, and they loved the sense of justice in the books, and the sense of family. And so the two the two goals that I had were, I want fans to want to reread my books over and over again, and I want to make money. So those were my two goals. And
Mhm.
been fortunately, I've been blessed and been very successful.
Yeah, well, I'd say so, just to say the least, anyway. Being a writer, I guess, is like a bucket list thing that we've both got in common. For me, it was I'd always thought about it, always wanted to do it, but it was the birth of my first grandchild that kind of gave me the kick in the butt of like, man, I better get going on this.
And just for the record, I'm going to interrupt here. And for anyone who hasn't seen you, I'm looking at you, and you told me just a few minutes ago you had 4 grandchildren. I'm like, wait, what? You have 4? You don't look old enough to have 4. What did you do? Get married when you were 12?
well, no, I was going to say my wife is, but no, never mind. That's not the right word. She looks
That's
young.
not going to work very well.
No, she looks much younger than I do. So, but no, yeah,
Wise
no,
man.
no, we're only a couple years apart. But I just right now I have you've been a big inspiring me to get busy and get some books out there, and hopefully I'll have my first one out here pretty soon.
Excellent. Hurry up.
So you started off in one genre, moved into another, or added it to your existing stories, then moved into more genres and branched out into more yet. How are you finding ways to do this?
Okay, so the Criterion Game. So I was successful with my own series and producing them one every 6 weeks or so. And so I had reached a level of success, but remember, that's still only one book every 6 weeks. And I would have readers that were telling me, "Is like, hey, great, when's the next book?" And I'm like, I just slaved for 6 weeks to get this to you, and you're not happy after 4 hours. And so it became a situation where I was starting to help other authors, and I would point to them. But then the fans were asking me for stories there was no way I could write. I already had a series that was going to go 21 books. And I knew that was going to take 18 months, 2 years. And then, like, what about this? So long story short, I reached out to some authors that I knew in the 20 books to 50K group, and a couple reached out to me, and I said, hey, I need to expand my universe, and I need to work this in such a way that the fans get a very congruent emotional experience in the books. I don't want you to try to write exactly like me, but we have to make sure that there's a familiarity with the stories and how it goes. And so as I'm pushing books out month and a half, I'm starting to take up certain niches in Amazon. So, if you look in the sci-fi and then you go to genetics or something, or some of the others, you might see 15 of my books in the top 100. And it's like, just imagine what's going on. But from a marketing and business perspective, it's not good to own only one niche. And
Hmm.
so we looked at it and started to decide, like, let's take these stories where we have this post-apocalyptic dystopian type of situation, and let's write in that genre. And
Mhm.
so I reached out to Craig Martell, it was in post-apocalyptic, with a character that we had, and he built the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles. That's 10 books, that cover 150 years of story time. And then we had other situations, but really it became down to just business.
Mhm.
We can't put 100 books in one genre and expect to be able to keep growing our reader base. We
Mhm.
needed to spread to all of them, or as many of them as we could. We haven't done romance, but There we go.
Well, and I'm sure one of the jokes has always been you could always just make your vampires glitter, and you'll have there's your foot in the door for the romance.
Yeah, it was funny because a lot of the reviews. Now I haven't read Twilight, but I know the jokes, and there were people like, there are no sparkly vampires in these books.
Well, the nice thing about it, I think, is that to be a good reader, it's always a good idea to read more than one genre anyway,
Mm-hmm.
to mix it up, to try something different, things like that. So this is where one of the brilliant things for me is that I look at this and I say, you got opportunities galore for people to come in from one genre or another, and then go back and go, oh, you know what? Here's the beginning of it. Went back in this genre, and I
Mm-hmm.
might as well try it out. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, we have been blessed from that situation where people are like, "Wow, I found you on, this particular series over here," and they kept referencing Bethany Ann, like the Age of Magic stuff, and they're talking about Chris and Lee's C.M. Raymond and Ellie Brabant's books, and they're looking at it going, "Well, they kept talking about the matriarch." I'm like, "Who is this that they're talking about?" And then I find out there's a 21 book series about that character.
Right. Well, going back to Bethany Ann, your first book, one of the things that you did I thought was brilliant, aside from Dracula or a couple of other books with werewolves, I hadn't read a whole lot along those lines. So I thought, well, this would be interesting to see what he does. And I love is it nanocytes? Is that how you,
Hmm.
okay.
Right.
The nanocytes. How did you develop that? Because well, I'll let you explain what a nanocyte is and what this did to your characters.
All right. So nanocytes themselves are technology, or just consider them infinitesimally small medical machines that invade your body. So think of them as like little blood cells, but they're machines.
Mm.
And so they're able to go through your body, and if they're programmed, they're able to operate on you. So and change things, because in this case, it's alien technology being empowered by what's called the etheric. Now, there's a couple of rules of physics and different things that says that all mass is energy and all energy can become mass. So effectively stating, except for gravity, if you have enough energy, you can turn it into anything. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So the premise is that an alien with incredibly advanced technology is able to change a human's body to accomplish certain things. So, for instance, let's say bone density. Well, your bones are set up with certain capabilities of
Mm-hmm.
torsion. So the ability to twist it and different things. Well, it is a really great design, but by now we know that there's probably better designs for those bones. And if you have enough time and these nanomolecular robots, if you will, inside of your body, they could change your bones. So that was a concept. It's like, okay, we can get enhanced people out of this. And to be fair, we're actually talking about it and have been talking about it for 10 or 20 years. And we actually are doing now in this, on our planet, this type of science. And so a lot of the science that's in the Arthurian Gambit was an extrapolation of just what are we doing now, what's in the research or development phase, and what do we expect to be able to get to in 5 or 10 years. Now, I'm almost 50, so I recognize that when they say it should be out in 5 or 10 years, what they mean is 20 or 50. But so we get caught up in that at times. The genesis is just, if energy can become anything, then what happens if you have enough? And what happens if you have a device or a million such little bitty devices that can do something with it if they're programmed correctly? And then you
Mm-hmm.
wave what we affectionately refer to as the big ass magic author wand and say we have aliens who figured it out. And there we go. There's the genesis of the story.
Okay. Now, at its heart, for the way it started off, these created the first vampire. So vampires came what we know of them today originally started with an alien being that created the first one, essentially. Is that correct?
Right. It goes back to the Middle Ages. Whenever you have one man who is doing on a crusade, he gets lost, he gets hurt, he goes up into the mountains, and he stumbles through to where an alien had crash landed. And this particular alien was trying to figure out how to help Earth, because other tribes of the Cartherians, other clans, eventually, could be 100 years, could be 1,000 years, could be 10,000 years, but eventually would come to attack this planet.
Hmm.
And so his purpose was to prepare humans by evolving them. The problem was he isn't exactly a medical officer. And so it's based on the technology. The human that gets started, it was so painful to him that he busted out. And
Mm.
so he wasn't completely transformed. And the etheric, one of the easiest ways to get energy, and he craves energy, is from blood. So there's a huge connection to the etheric through the blood, and therefore those vampires actually needed it, and that's what started it. It was
Okay.
based on an incomplete alien transformation.
That was awesome. I loved that whole idea. When I was reading that, I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I loved it." So since then, as you say, you've branched out into other genres with other authors. You obviously what genres you branched out into, but to help our readers get a grip on this, what basic storylines did the other ones branch out into? Like I know some went into the future, so many
Oh, okay.
years, so many hundreds of years.
Hmm.
Some went in the past, sideways.
Yeah.
So
Well, we'll say we start sometime around 2010 for the sake of argument.
okay.
And that's, 2010, 2015 is approximately where the first book that I start. And then we go into the future 15 or 20 years through the first 7 books of the series. From there, we have a few more years, and then there's a break. And the main character goes through a gate and goes through another system. And then we have something that befalls Earth, which we call affectionately WWDE, or the world's worst day ever. And so we have an apocalyptic event. And so while Bethany Ann is trying to locate and protect the Earth in other systems, we had a situation here that occurs. And so we call that 150 years while she's gone. Here on Earth, we call it the Second Dark Ages, and over there, I'd call it like the Age of the Empire. You know, now we just released book 21 and book 4, which culminated that time frame, and Bethany Ann comes back and protects Earth, and then that begins outside Earth. That begins what's called the Age of the Federation, or the Age of Expansion. So that's outside of Earth. Here, we roll into after they leave, because they have a project they need to do. So Earth needs to be left alone, and it ends up becoming what's called the Age of Madness, which rolls into the Age of Magic. Arthur C. Clarke has these rules, and the third rule is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And if you remember what we mentioned a little bit ago, talking about energy being able to be converted to mass, then we have a situation that if you can convert enough energy, you can make anything, right? And so the question then becomes, what happens if humans were infected and they start recognizing this ability, but they don't understand the underlying scientific premise? They would think it's magic.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, so the Age of Expansion is the same time frame then as this Age of Magic, and then we'll have an event to close up both of those ages.
Okay.
So we're writing toward that.
So what is next for Michael Anderle now that you've wrapped up, well, sort of wrapped up your Cthulhian? What's next for Michael Anderle?
So the Cthulhian Endgame, continuing with the chess motif, will start in about 3 months. And in between there, I've got to give out in Oris Sarin, this other universe that we've created, I have what's called the Unbelievable Mr. Brownstone. So that's my series inside there. So we're working on that one. And got a series with Haley Lawson looking at called 13 Covens. And with Lori Starkey, kind of consulting with her on her universe called Seven Sons. And I am working toward the end of the year, but also working with Krishan Keller-Hanna on the Shaman States of America. And there's another one that I'll probably release the name later, but there's another series that's in production right now, and about 8 other series inside the Cthulhian universe, and where Saren's got 3 coming out. I mean, it's my company, LMBPN Publishing, is a publishing company. We publish 10 to 15 books minimum a month. And so the fans have come to a situation where they just enjoy working with us, because a lot of us are on Facebook. We're clowning around. Just as a note, I've been relatively clean here on this particular podcast.
Yes, you have. It's going to make my editing much easier later.
Yes, I'm trying to, so Craig Martell and I or others, I mean, we're fairly loose with just gigging each other. And so an example would be in the Criterion Facebook group, not the Facebook page, but in the group where the fans are talking back and forth. Someone talked about naming people in their books, and actually that might be the writer's right. But anyway, so I'm like, yeah, that bastard Craig Martell, that bleep here, I'll just bleep myself. That'll work out better. That bleep Craig Martell made me a freaking mayor in one of them, and he kills me off. And then next thing I know, 5 minutes later, Craig notices this, and then so he replies back. He's like, yeah, you were a bleep. I stabbed you through with a pipe or something. I'm like, you bleep and bleeper. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going back and forth. So the fans are enjoying it because they're in the middle of all of this. We're all getting in there just having a blast, and the authors will pop in from time to time, and we'll all give each other so much.
Yeah. It's fantastic. So I just had one other thought here before we go into the chapter you're going to be reading, and I believe I know the answer to this, but so it all started with the first vampire who could not hold it. His name was Michael. Was that an accident?
Oh, it's Michael the Archangel. So
Okay.
I come from a Christian background, and his code name in the book is called the Archangel. And I never thought about people going, I thought it was obvious. The Archangel, Michael. So they put two and two. It wasn't until I was like book 8 or 9 when someone pinged me on Facebook, one of the fans, and they said, that's some huevos to be naming a character after yourself. And I'm looking at him going, I didn't name him after, oh my gosh, how many people think, it's one of those questions whenever you ask a group of audience and all of a sudden you see sheepishly 80% of the people raise their hands and you're just going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
It's like an unintentional meta kind of thing going on.
Exactly. Yeah, because when you reached out to me to do this, you're like, well, we're going to have some questions, not a problem. And then you're like, yeah, and then we'd like you to read a chapter. I'm like, come again? Feel like I was joking with you, but it felt like I was always the little whiny crybaby. You're really gonna make me do this? You're gonna make me read a book? Oh my gosh! But you're gonna make me do this? Okay. For anybody that's listening, we have LMBNS 80 audiobooks, and I tried to get our beloved host here to let me just drop you the first chapter by Emily Beresford, which is great, but no. He's like, yeah, no, we would really like you to read it. Oh, great.
Well, I tell you what, let's go into it a little bit. First, how can people find you online? Which sounds like a silly question, but maybe there could be a reader out there who does not know anything about the Michael Anderle universe.
Yeah, the Michael Anderle experience, huh?
Yeah. How do we find you online?
On Amazon, I am unique to Amazon. That was a business reason because they sell the most books and I didn't have enough time to try to go wide. So that was my reasoning for that. CritherianBooks.com, but Facebook is usually where you get a hold of us, and that's Critherian Gambit or Critherian Books. And you will find 5 or 6 or 7 different websites or in Facebook different groups because some of the ages have their own. Like Age of Magic has their own Facebook group or other authors, but we're kind of a big happy family. And then the main one has got about 10,000 fans, so that would be the core if you find that one.
All right, fantastic. So what chapter are we going to hear today?
Well, I figured what the hell. We'll start with chapter 1. Death Becomes Her. It's been a while since I've looked at this. It's one of those situations where it feels like you've thrown the gauntlet down, right? Throw that gauntlet down. You're going to read something like, you know what? I may make a flaming fool of myself, but I'm going to try to read this as if I actually know what I'm doing.
Oh, you're going to do great. I know it. Hey, once again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Michael Anderle reading Book 1 of his massively successful series, The Critherian Gambit, Book 1, Death Becomes Her.
Death Becomes Her. May those who fight have honor, else we are doomed in the end. Unknown politician stump speech. The problem with honor? Honor can be a restraining bitch on you. I've decided honor was for the last generation. Bethany Ann Reynolds, Queen of the Unknown World. Virginia, USA. Cautiously, the large agent entered the dilapidated wooden warehouse in Old Town, Virginia. Taking up most of a city block and surrounded by old, weather-beaten and rusting pipes, it was an eyesore to everyone walking or driving by it. He spoke into his mic. Carl, 3 heartbeats. Smells are incredibly pungent, with a slight sick smell, kind of like they're going through severe body issues or eating lots of yellow curry. I'm not sure which. He listened as Carl retorted over the earpiece. Bill, for the record, Indian food is magnificent, and your culinary bigotry is showing. Easy for you to say. I'm the one who has to smell it when you go overboard eating it. Stopping the conversation and moving silently, the agent squeezed his entirely too big body through holes, which were certainly too small. Okay, inside perimeter, and we'll be making contact inside 30, that is 30 seconds. Smells include heavy bleach with a subtle aroma of aforementioned nastiness. Still 3 tangos, no heartbeat warnings, no talking. Carl was viewing the videotape coming from the needle camera attached to Bill's heavy helmet and mask. While there was no way Carl could ever make it on a takedown, he certainly enjoyed sitting in on the real-time action. Okay, big guy, I have all the info coming in from the sensors outside. We have no movement and nothing out of the ordinary. We don't seem to have any issues with flanking, so you are a go from this side. Your call, Billy boy. Bill swore to himself. If there was one thing that got under his skin more than the last 15 years working with Carl, other than being called Billy Boy, he didn't know what it was. One of these days, he was going to give Carl the monumental wedgie he kept asking for. Except he never said it when Bill was around, and Bill never thought about it except times like this. One of these days, though, God help him, and the big guy would be upset, but he was going to make it so Carl had to be surgically removed from his shorts. Time to get back to business. Okay, approaching and have visual. 3 contacts all dressed in jeans and shirts, nothing different except 2 have hunting vests on. One has his off and is messing with it. Can't see what he's doing as his back is to me. At that moment, one of the men cocked his head and gestured at the other 2, who suddenly looked in Bill's direction. You've been made, loudmouth. Carl couldn't keep the concern out of his playful jibe. Shit. Okay. Apparently this might get bloody. Talk to Primary and let him know we might need cleanup. Primary is already in listen-only mode. I'm sure he's setting up dispatches already. Bill heard the 3 guys around the card table stand up and fan out, ready to face him. He sighed. It wasn't as if he was worried. He had taken out so many people in fights like this or gunfights, it wasn't even funny. While he looked about 38, he was closer to 76 years old. Pretty young for a vampire, actually. While bullets hurt, he would mend, and the pain would remind him not to get sloppy next time. Bill stood up, all 6'4", and confidently strode right over to the 3 guys, stopping about 10 feet away. Damn, if that smell bothering him wasn't peculiar. The bleach was causing his nose severe issues, but he could still smell something over that nasty stuff. Carl watched through the video link as Bill started asking the guys if they would like to come quietly, or he never got out the next word, as all 3 rushed Bill and a signal from his headgear suddenly stopped. The incoming video from a couple of the cameras outside that weren't damaged showed the whole wooden warehouse go up in flames, while smoking embers rained down from the sky in streaks onto nearby buildings. Carl was pretty sure that in seconds there wouldn't be a piece of the engulfed warehouse left. His best partner, his friend, had just vanished in a big ball of heated urgency and consumption. Carl just stared at the screens, willing Bill to come running back out through the flames. Somehow, they knew they were coming, and they knew how to take a vamp down. 3 of them were willing to take their own lives to make it happen. The color, what little was left, drained from Carl's face. The shock of losing his friend, the shock of being so mistaken about Bill's safety, left Carl staring at the screen. The ringing of the phone broke through his pain, his stupor. It was the primary contact. He hit the talk button. Yeah, his voice barely above a whisper. A gruff voice from the other end of the line. Tell me he has enough parts left that we can make it back to us, Carl, said Frank, their primary contact with the government. He had been working his solo career deep in the bowels of the darkest areas of security, so long he predated Carl by decades. I have spec ops ready to extract in 5 minutes. No, Frank, we just lost him. All of him. I just lost my fucking best friend. Carl wanted to slam the button down as anger and anguish directed both at those who killed Bill and himself rose up. We can't get noticed right now. We're obviously being watched, and something is so rotten in Denmark, I can't even think straight. I'm so sorry, Carl. Frank knew that there wasn't much he could say. Carl was his 3rd contact on the other side of the red line, and he was aware that it was Carl's first loss. Frank had been through 2 others before this, and while he interacted with the agents, he was uncomfortable around them. Frank knew that no matter what the protocol said, it was never his program. What's our next step, kid? Frank had to get Carl thinking again. While Carl wasn't young compared to Frank's near-century mark, he was a drop in the bucket. Step? Carl said, sounding like his mind was just idling. Nothing going on as the take from the outside camera showed the burning warehouse and registered the sirens in the distance. Probably Frank's work. As much as Carl wanted to yell and scream, cry, and drink himself into oblivion, there was only one response. With a voice only starting to come back, Carl replied, "Do, Frank? There's only one choice. I have to wake him up." Any color left in Carl's face totally faded away. Oh my God, he thought. What's going to happen now? Frank, on the line hundreds of miles away, had much the same thought, except his thought was even more concise. It was simply, oh shit.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome. I want to thank Michael Anderle for coming on the show. That was a sample chapter from Death Becomes Her, book 1 of the Catherian Gambit series. Make sure to get on over to one of his many Facebook pages to follow along with the series. I'll make sure and put links to the pages in the show notes. Don't forget to leave a review after you've read the book. And while you're at it, make sure you leave us a review wherever it is you're listening to us. And we will catch you again next time. Bye.